Hello, and welcome to episode 35 of the Fiber Circus. I'm your host Elizabeth, coming to you from southern Indiana, and I have a hand-dyeing, knitting, machine knitting, spinning, and slightly crazy at this moment fiber farm. So sit back and relax, and hopefully I can help you de-stress a little. So today is March 23rd, and today Indiana is now officially closed because of the lovely COVID, whatever it is, 19 or 17, COVID coronavirus awesomeness. We've kind of been sheltering in place at home for like the last week, and I didn't realize just how much I like to be able to leave the house until somebody told me that I can't. So I've gone a little stir crazy this past couple of weeks. So since last we met, I've been to an alpaca show, I sheared some sheep, and I've had several events canceled. So it's been interesting to say the least. So if you would like to get a hold of me, all my contact information is down below, and I am Spottedcircus on Instagram, Facebook, Ravelry, and pretty much all social media. So, once again, sit back, relax, enjoy the craziness these days. So, I've been doing a little bit of knitting since it's been like 20 some odd days since I last podcasted. So, I've also gotten some cast-on-itis, because that's what you do when you're sitting at home and trying to not do the work you're supposed to be doing. So the first thing that I worked on, at least I think I've worked on it since last we talked. I'm looking now trying to find a marker to prove that I've done something, and it's quite possible maybe I haven't. Shows how much it is I remember though. So this is it's called the Tessera Colorwork Cowl by Brooklyn Tweed Jared Flood. And I'm knitting it out of Brooklyn Tweed's, let's see, this one is Loft. So it's an 100% American wool. And I'm using this blue color, which is called Almanac, this green color, which is called SAFF, and then there's also a yellow color, which I think is called Haystack, maybe. Something having to do with hay. So I'm working on this colorwork project. Here's where I'm at. I can't find a marker that showed where I was last time. So I have a feeling I really haven't knit anything on this in the last 2.5 weeks. So just pretend that I've maybe done 2 or 3 stitches. I mean, maybe I did this like half of a row or something. Who knows this rate? So it's going along. I'm using size 7 needles. And my colorwork tension is improving quite a bit. I was swatching for a sweater a while back. However, I kind of stopped doing that in favor of doing this, because this is also technically a fingering weight, and that sweater that I wanted to knit is a fingering weight. So this may tell me something about my gauge when I'm doing it in the round. Can you tell that when you aren't supposed to scratch and like touch your face, that's the first thing that you do? Yeah, that's pretty awesome. So I'm working on this slowly but surely. It hasn't really captured my attention recently, because it's something where I had to actually think quite a bit to work on it. So I didn't take it with me to the show, because I knew that I wouldn't have time to sit there and contemplate which stitch I was supposed to be doing. So I'm working on that. The other thing is a new project that I've cast on. So I was going to do that interesting colorwork sweater I posted about a few weeks ago. And then I decided, since I wasn't getting gauged correctly and it was just frustrating me, that I was going to do something else. So I decided to cast on the Wifty top by François Denoy, also known as Frenchie, or the Fiber Muse. And you can see it's a pretty simple top. The construction's actually extremely easy. You're basically making 2 giant rectangles and then attaching them up at the shoulders and at the armpits. Obviously, it's not an open sweater by any means. The pattern, I've read the comments. So this pattern's been out for a little while. I don't remember when exactly she put it out. But a lot of the comments have to do with the fact that when you go to actually do the seaming, that the neckline and stuff can be a little wonky. So it's going to be interesting to attach this later on. However, it's a very mindless knit, which I'm really appreciating right now. So I decided to cast it on using, and of course I'm in the middle of a row, using my Superwash fine merino nylon in the Disco Lights colorway. So this is a black light reactive yarn. And I don't have any of the Superwash merino nylon in the store right now. I do, however, have this same colorway on my alpaca merino sock base, and I am going to be dyeing it up on my BFL Firestar fingering weight base. So if you like this, keep an eye out for it. So I'm knitting it on size 5 needles, and here is where I'm at right now. So it's going up at an angle, and you can see it's consisting, sorry about the glare from the side there. So it is alternating garter stitch and reverse garter stitch panels, and I'm not alternating skeins because, you know, you gotta live dangerously like that. So it's more heavily speckled down at the base here where there's less stitches. Well, not really, I guess. Looks like there's more speckliness the farther out I go. Who knows? So I've got another 5 ridges total to do before I'm going to start decreasing to then make it into a rectangle. It's an interesting pattern. I mean, it's not exactly real complicated, which I really appreciate right now. So I can not have to worry about paying attention to much and just keep going. So this is how my reverse speckle dyes up. You can see there's usually 1 to 2, sometimes 3 little bitty blips of color as it knits. So I think it's going to be kind of a fun summery top. Yeah, it's going to be sleeveless. This is also part of, Frenchie is one of the designers and teachers that's going to be coming to SSK in July. So I'm doing this for points also, because you got to do everything for points. In theory, I should only have to use probably a little under 1,300 yards. How much you use isn't real specific in here, because how big you make this sweater is completely based off your own measurements. So technically the gauge or the sizing on this is very, very inclusive, because you can make it as big as you want. You just have to do some addition and a little bit of math to figure out where you need to stop at and where you need to start decreasing again. So yeah, this is what I've been working on. Right now it looks like a bandana because I'm still knitting it on circular needles. I'm just going back and forth. I really don't like purling. Those rows are much, much slower for me. But it's mindless. And these days, I think we all need a little bit of mindlessness. So that is in progress. So let's see, that's my knitting. Did I finish anything? I don't think I've really finished anything since we last talked. I'm trying to kind of remember without, because I didn't bother to write down show notes, because, you know, fly by the seat of your pants today. So yeah, I don't think I've really finished anything. I did do a little bit of spinning when I was at the National Alpaca Show. And I worked some more on this spinning for my sweater. So I'm up to, I think, 1 pound 4 ounces on this bobbin. And I'm getting to the point where I need to probably start plying this. And I want to probably ply it with a black, but it needs to be a pretty strong core for me. So like in theory a silk thread would be perfect, but I also need to get a little over 1,000 yards out of this, and I don't know that I have 1,000 yards of black silk thread right now, so that's kind of held me back. I'm not 100% sure what I'm going to do. So I did finally find the end, but you can see it's a pretty thick yarn. If I use my, I happen to have a wraps per inch gauge right here. Let's see, I'm getting roughly 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like 5-ish wraps per inch. So that's going to tell me what my, what type of yarn I'm making, whether it's like a fingering weight, a worsted weight, bulky, super bulky. I think if I remember right, I'm going for a bulky weight. Some places are obviously much thicker than others. Like there, I was probably talking to somebody, so I got distracted. But it'll be okay. So I've got to figure out what it is I'm going to do for that. So this is a 1 pound bobbin from Spinolution, and you can see it's just about full up to the top. And I know that there's more than a pound on there because I think I started out with maybe 6 or 7 braids of this fiber. And I think I have maybe 1 or 2 left. And they're left because the colors aren't the exact same. I'm going to need to add some more green to them if I want to use them. So I need to just go ahead and get this plied, because then that'll tell me where it is that I'm at. And all this was spun on my Spinolution Firefly, which is an electric wheel. And I love my electric wheel. It's very handy. And it becomes very mindless when you're spinning something like this, when you're not exactly worried about consistency. So, spinning, machine knitting, haven't done any of that. To be honest with you, this quarantining stuff has kind of got me in a funk. I have things I know I should be working on. However, the motivation level is like this big right now for some reason. So I've got to figure out a way to reward myself. Like, you know, dye 10 skeins and get a cookie. You know, something like that. Because, you know, I normally work from home. I mean, I'm usually here by myself with the critters, and it usually doesn't bother me at all. But God, last week, I was trying to weigh out some fiber on my scale, and the stupid scale kept jumping from like 0.2 to 0.6, and it wouldn't like stop on a single number. And I literally burst into tears because I was so mad and upset about everything, which is absolutely silly to get upset over a scale. So I ordered a new scale because that scale made me mad. So I got a better scale, and it definitely measures correctly, which I appreciate. But yeah, I've just kind of been going slightly stir crazy. So, I have updated the shop, which is a good thing because all my sales are pretty much going to be online these days with the way that things are going. So if you've shopped from me already, I greatly appreciate it. I'm working on our taxes also, and looking at the income that came in last March and April versus what I know is going to happen now that the Fiber Festival is canceled next month is pretty scary. I don't like that much. Usually my sales in the springtime help buy hay for the herd, and so it's going to be an interesting time. So, since we last met, I have done a little bit of traveling and a little bit of things. So, I did some sheep shearing. I went to the sheep shearing class up at Purdue and spent like 6 or 7 hours in a cold barn, and promptly came down with a cold directly after, which in the time of Corona, it's really awesome to be the person with a cold and with allergies because everybody looks at you as if you have the Black Plague. I made the mistake of blowing my nose when I went out to eat at one point, and I had people actually mutter, "Oh, she may have the Corona," and got up and walked out. So, yeah, having a cold is awesome right now. So I went to the sheep shearing class, and I shear our alpacas. I know how to shear an animal. I shear my poodle, you know, when she needs it. And I have shorn our sheep Ted for the past, I think he's going on 8 this year. So I've shorn him, stop poodle, 6 out of the 8 years, I think. And I've done it in various methods, but what I wanted to do was attempt to get better at the motion. With the alpacas, we actually tie them down and then roll them from one side to the other side as we're shearing them. With the sheep, you actually support the sheep's body and then move the sheep to your body. Poodle, stop. Sorry, the sheep is out in front of the house, and he tends to stare in at me, and he thinks that he should be fed pellets at all times. And that seems to be riling up the dog today. Tippy, stop. Thank you. So, sheep shearing. So yeah, I sheared 2 sheep, and then promptly called somebody else to come and shear my sheep, which sounds really silly, I know. The problem is that I don't have enough sheep to shear to become familiar with the muscle memory of rolling the sheep and positioning the sheep to get a really good fleece to come off without a lot of second cuts. If I had a whole bunch of meat breed sheep where they really don't care about the fleece to practice on, it may be another story. But I care about my fleeces, and I cared enough to not ruin my fleeces. So, that was Saturday. I got a hold of the guy about shearing the sheep, and he actually came out on Monday right before it started to rain and did all 4 sheep in like half an hour. So, that was great. And it was kind of interesting because I wore my Fitbit during the sheep shearing class, and you can see exactly on my Fitbit when I was shearing the sheep because my pulse skyrocketed. And at one point, my Fitbit informed me, good job at exercising as I'm shearing the sheep. I'm like, I'm not exercising. I'm just stressed that I'm not going to like cut parts on the sheep and just not do this correctly. So that was interesting. You know, if you have a herd of meat sheep locally and you need somebody to practice on shearing your sheep, hey, I'm more than willing to practice. It's definitely a whole nother set of muscles. It involves a lot of your back and your abs to hold stuff up. I had to take my coat off when shearing because I had the issue that most men don't have where you've got to be able to look over your chest to see where the tail of the sheep is to make sure that you can shear without cutting parts. So I think that's where having a smaller chest would also be very helpful when shearing sheep. I don't know. I haven't seen as many lady sheep shearers out there. I know that there are because over half the class was ladies, which was awesome, I thought. I actually have a local friend that when I showed up there, she was there too with her husband. I'm like, holy cow, I knew you guys had sheep, but I didn't realize that you would be at this class. And they have North Country Cheviots. So I think I'm actually going to probably get their fleeces because they actually use them for their herding dogs versus fiber and that kind of stuff. So I may get a hold of her if the quarantine lifts and see if she wants me to come over and shear her sheep, because in reality, there's no real loss if the fleeces are not perfect then. So yeah, sheep shearing was a treat. So we sheared the sheep and I immediately tossed some of it in the dye pots because, you know, that's what you do when you get sheep fleeces. So Peep Sheep, our youngest ewe, sheared 11 pounds of fleece. And it's a little over 10 inches, roughly. And this is some of her fleece that I then dyed up. And see, it barely fits in the screen there. So yeah, it's extremely lustrous and shiny. And the locks are really, really nice. So I dyed up, I think, about 8 ounces of that. And I think that there's roughly 2 ounces of this left in the store. And that's it right now. So I did her fleece. Then, let's see, I washed up locks of pretty much everyone just to see what they were looking like. And then, so then these three would be Ted. Ted's this one. This is Ramsey's. He's got more of a curl to his locks. And then this is Other Sheep. So they're all roughly around 6 inches. They're all super lustrous and shiny. And they're holding together pretty nicely. Ted was slightly felty, which I was a little bit disappointed about. So what I'm thinking about doing right now is combining Ted and Ramsey's and doing a fingering weight yarn from it. I've talked to a couple of mills about doing this, and the problem is they don't like to wash sheep's fleece. And in reality, Teeswater fleece isn't that hard to wash. It's not super heavy lanolin. So I may be pre-washing the fleeces and then sending them out. The one thing I really like about sheep's fleeces is these guys have been bred for long enough that their fleeces are very consistent. So across the entire fleece, I really only have to skirt off like the little leg sections and like the belly that's kind of gross. And then the rest of it's pretty much all 1 micron. And from sheep to sheep, it's pretty much 1 micron as well. I mean, there's not a big variance between them. The only difference you get sometimes is length. But really, between these three, I mean, these three are all within about 1/2 inch of each other. So this will actually spin up really nicely, I think. It's kind of funny, in the 7+ years that we've had Ted, I have yet to spin any of his fleece because it usually sells. So my goal this year is to actually spin a little bit of it, maybe, for myself. So that's some of some of what theirs looks like. And then I can show you, I dyed up a little bit of Ramsey's fleece. So this I did not separate out into individual locks like I do for Peep Sheep's fleece. This I dyed as just a big piece of fleece. And I think it turned out gorgeous. The way that Teeswater takes the dye is extremely rich. The scaling on the actual locks, instead of being short, tiny scales that form each individual hair like on merino, they're wider apart. And that's also a trait of a higher micron fleece normally. But it really increases the reflectivity of the fiber. So you can really get some super deep, rich saturation in fleece. So I dyed up this piece, and it's part of Ramsey's because you can see it's much more curly at the tips. And I just kind of had this out for people to look at there at the National Alpaca Show. I think I may keep this piece and figure out how exactly to lock spin with it, because I think this is just so pretty. And I think it would be something really cool as like a neck warmer somehow. A lot of the locks I sell normally like this are dyers will buy them, and they'll actually, you know, or not dyers, felters. And they'll either weave the locks in, or they'll like felt in just the ends of them and then have it as a fringe. Me, I just like to pet it. For being a 30 plus micron fleece, it feels extremely soft, and that's because of how consistent it is. So I'm pretty happy with my fleeces this year. I have roughly 30 some odd pounds to work with of Teeswater right now. I've got an order right now for a pound of dyed locks off of one of the girls. So we'll get to working on that pretty soon. So let's see. After that, I then went to the National Alpaca Show, which was in Fort Wayne, Indiana. Not last weekend, but the weekend before. And normally Nationals is a huge sales event for me. I go and I do demonstrations to the public on how to utilize alpaca fleece and what it is you can do with fleece and fiber. I got there Wednesday. There was a hockey game that night at the facility that was packed full of people. Alpaca owners started showing up on Wednesday. On Thursday, they decided to close the show to the public. And there went the sales. Because there's other vendors there that are wholesalers, where they import products out of Peru and whatnot. And they're still going to do decent in sales because a lot of people are usually restocking their farm stores and stuff for sales. However, as a small indie vendor, that isn't always the case for me. So, I had plenty of time on my hands to talk with people, which was nice. I appreciated that. However, the sales were like a 20th of what they were last year in Denver in the middle of a bomb cyclone. So that kind of sucked. Luckily, my expenses weren't crazy to get there. I mean, Fort Wayne wasn't very far away, and I had a nice little Airbnb in a house that was really pretty cheap too. So that was nice. But it definitely was not what I had expected. However, if you notice here on the back of the couch, there's something missing. And it's because both my baby Yodas sold at the show. Thank you, Lord. I was so glad that I took baby Yoda in the first place. And I actually sold one to a farm in Texas. And then the other one went to, I'm trying to remember where they were from. I want to say Virginia or Carolina area. So baby Yodas have both gone to a new home. So it was nice having baby Yoda. However, I don't miss him right now because I have supplies to technically make another baby Yoda. So that was good. That was at least a few sales, which definitely helped me out quite a bit. Because otherwise there would have been no sales, and that would have really sucked. So we did Nationals. What happened after Nationals? After Nationals, nothing much has happened because that's when the corona stuff really started going slightly more crazy with people. So, you know, we've just kind of been hanging out here at home. I've been trying to work on some dyeing. However, that motivation is not as awesome as what it needs to be right now. I'm going to have to kick it into high gear because I got to do something. And with the fiber event in Greencastle that was supposed to be next month canceled, that kind of put a wrench into things too. So on a good note, I don't need to start dyeing to make sure I have stuff for the fiber event. On the bad note, all the fiber event income is now gone. So that's not too awesome. So I'm working on this large wholesale order that I have right now. And I'm very, very thankful that I have that wholesale order. And I've got a few months to get it done. But it makes sense to just get it done now. I'm glad I was able to order the fiber and yarn for it early because some of my suppliers are now saying that because of Corona, shipping's going to be impacted and supplies may not necessarily be available. So it's going to be interesting to see what the next couple of months holds. Technically, my next event would have been shearing over in Kentucky in 2 weeks. However, with the 2-week shutdown of Indiana, that's kind of off the books right now. Agriculture is technically a necessary travel type thing where you can still travel to do agriculture. However, I'm high risk with my asthma, so my husband's not so keen on me traveling. So we'll see after the next week what happens in the world and see if the world has calmed down a little bit. Maybe I'll still go. It's not looking so awesome though. So after that, we're going to be shearing here. Can't have a group larger than 10. And I don't know that I can send people permission slips for agriculture to come over and help either. So that may be interesting. We may start shearing slightly earlier. I'm planning on the second weekend in April right now. We may go for the first weekend. Kind of depends on what happens with the weather. We've been getting rain here like every other day right now. So one of our males is definitely wearing mud maracas, is what I call them, where the fiber on the legs is so muddy there's mud balls attached to it, which really sucks. So that was middle April. May, I'm supposed to go to Colorado for shearing. That's a pretty big deal for my shearing if I'm not able to travel out for that. So I'm praying that by May stuff has calmed down. Because yeah, that won't be cool if that has to get canceled at all. You know, and it's not that I'm not concerned about people's travel or about people's health and that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I'm hoping that everybody has gotten a little more sane about this and has taken the proper precautions, stayed inside, flattened the curve and stuff. So that way we can all start to get back to normal, because as a small business, there's a lot of small businesses that are going to be hurting. Maryland Sheep and Wool canceled, which is in May, and for some farms, that's the only festival they do, and that provides income for most of their year. And a lot of the small farms that also do Maryland don't have websites where they can put all their products up onto Etsy and that kind of stuff. So it's going to be a pretty tough year to be a small farm and a small business right now. So that's May. The first weekend in June is Hoosier Hills Fiber Festival in Franklin. Praying that that goes on, because that would be really awesome. And then I have the Natural Fiber Extravaganza and SSK in July. And then I think it's September is the wool gathering over in Ohio that I have. And then October is SAFF. So we're hoping and praying that by May, things have calmed down and started to get back to normal slightly. And that people are not hoarding toilet paper anymore, because that's just silly. So let's see, events. What else is happening? I'm currently doing the teas of isolation on my Instagram and Facebook, where I'm drinking a different tea every day and showing off my color changing mugs, because it's something that's at least becoming a routine for me in the morning, and I have plenty of teas, so I'm doing some reviews of teas and that kind of stuff. So if you're interested in that kind of thing and seeing some different types of tea, for example, I had maple bacon pancakes the other day, and it's a pretty darn good tea. It was limited edition, so you can't necessarily get it, but I can tell you that it was delicious. So I'm doing that. I'm trying to keep in touch with people. Laura from the Knit Girls is doing an Instagram live every day, and that's kind of nice because it's a way to connect with people still that are on the outside, and feel like you're still connected with people, you know, when you can't really physically see them and that kind of stuff. So I'm going to try to do an Instagram live tomorrow at 2 o'clock. So that would be Tuesday at 2 Eastern time. And I'm going to try to do it out in the pasture with the critters. It's really muddy out there, and it may rain. If that happens, we may be inside, and I may just be sitting here knitting, chatting to you, and seeing what's happening with the world. Who knows? I also sometimes have internet connectivity issues, so that may also throw a wrench into my plan of going Instagram live, but we shall see. So, otherwise, I think that's about it for today. I'll stick some pictures in here at the end of some of the alpacas from the alpaca show, and then the naked sheep, because that's always interesting to see. So, otherwise, you know, thanks for supporting my small business. For those of you that have made purchases, I greatly appreciate it. I'll show you what my cats are doing, because they're having a great time in captivity here. So there's the two cats, and then there's the poodle right next to me. So you can see I have some awesome coworkers. They're a little bit demanding, For example, the kitten up there seems to think that I should be throwing pipe cleaners for her and playing laser with her. And we have currently lost her laser, so she's pretty upset about that. And that's not a necessary supply for me to go to Walmart for, is to buy a laser for the cat. And then the poodle. Yeah, the poodle's a poodle. So she's actually a miniature bred to a standard. So she's about I think she's a 15-inch poodle, and she's 12 to 15 pounds. But Tippy's going on, I think 11 this year, if I remember right. I've collected her fiber before. Was it something I'd want to wear? Not really. Trying to see if I can see the sheep out the window. Nope. Ted has decided to wander on about his merry little way. So, from me and my slightly crazy co-workers here, have a great week, and we will talk to you soon. Bye.